Super songs, the good, the bad, and the insanely great. Hey friends, it's John Pashada, and in this video tutorial, we're continuing a series on how to build a platform under your content. These are the habits that are much more powerful than just your talent alone. In episode 1, we talked about how to stage experiences and not just concerts. In this video today, we're talking about the 4 song archetypes that all songs fall into. So by the end of this video, I want to make sure you're bulletproof on where 80% of the revenue comes from for songs and recordings. And for artists, why 80% of their songs are commonly unpitchable and unrecordable. And lastly, I want to give you a tactical tool for keeping good songs off great recordings. So before we go to the training, let's pull up to 50,000 feet to understand the relationship between platform and content a little better. So baby artists, developing artists down here at the bottom of the world, focus on music. Content only. They're unaware and maybe misinformed at the role of platform and how it supports their content. Maybe they just are focused on winning a contest. Maybe they are trying to get lucky or win the lottery. Either way, it's a dangerous place for an artist to be. But as we move up to deploying artists and dominating artists at the top, those artists have a very different relationship to platform and content. Yes, they focus on content. They know that their music is what connects them to their fans. But they also know that the stuff underneath it, the platform that strengthens, supports it, sells it, the automation and processes and systems are what turns it into a career and that monetizes it at night when they're sleeping. Okay? It's the stuff that turns it into a 15-year career rather than a 15-month career. So that's an important thing as we go to the training. Also, forgot to mention, I want to give you a free gift. We have the first book in the Hacking Music series called Laying the Foundation. It's all about unplugging from magical thinking and kind of replugging into some mindsets that really set you up for success as you build a career over the next 2, 5, 10, 15 years. Really essential for artists of the future. So you can grab that at the link below. We want to get that into your hands. So with that, let's go to the training of the 4 song archetypes. Let's go. All right, so let's dive in the 4 song archetype. So first off, why songs? As an artist, you might say, I just want to write what I want to write and I want to feel what I want to feel. And that's just part of being an artist. And I'm a happy unicorn. And that is super common down at the developing tier of artists. But as you graduate from the developing tier and move into the deploying tier or even the dominating tier, your relationship with songs gets much more focused and much more surgical and much more on purpose and intentional. So here's where we find ourselves. Nowadays, there's fewer to really no song guys in the marketplace. There used to be people that were just focused on songs. I was mentored by one of them at Sony back in the 90s. But those song guys are now gone, song girls as well. No development time from labels or publishers. It's common for artists to kind of be their own A&R, and that is good in some ways and really detrimental in other ways. It's very common for modern artists to record every song they write. So if they're doing a 6-song EP, they're going to write 6 songs, and it is what it is. You get what you get. And fewer non-artist written songs are being cut. So that's just the world. That's the world we're in, right? So the intent of this module is to really make more of your shots count. Your time's busy. You're doing a lot more than you've ever done, and your writing time needs to not be wasted. So that is very important of what we're doing here. And we want to solve for something very specific, and that is the distance between good songs and truly great career-making songs. So that's what we're out to do. Let's talk about targets for a minute here. So the best way to think about songs is think of it as a target. If you're an archer, at first when you're just starting out, you're thrilled to hit the target at all. But as you grow and as you get around maybe an Olympic pro, you learn that there are actually techniques and skills and strategies that the pros always use to hit the center there. They don't miss, right? They know how to hit that center yellow circle. That's really the best way to think about this module. Think of it as a target. That's what we're going to hit. So for me personally, as a writer at Sony in the 90s, it took me 200 songs for this switch to even begin to go off. I made every mistake possible. I would bring in songs that were really overly produced, really cool guitar parts and loops and effects and all this stuff, and made every mistake possible to where, eventually, after getting around writers that were 10x better than me, Hall of Fame writers who kind of knew the guide rails, kind of like that archer. They knew how to hit the center of that target. They knew what songs not to write. They knew how to not waste time writing songs that shouldn't be written, and mistakes to never make again. So this is all kind of distilled from joint venture with Garth Brooks, working closely with the largest PROs and the largest publishing companies in the world. It's all distilled here in Hacking Music. So the net is really, we're going to learn how to create vehicles that both artists and their fans actually need. To have a bond, they need to have this thing called the song, the vehicle that connects them together for years. And that's not a small thing. All right, so let's talk about super songs for a second here. What are we not talking about? We're not talking about songs that are recorded on an EP or an album. We're not talking about hit songs. Maybe they were released to radio and a campaign was built around them. Not necessarily talking about those. We're talking about songs that are above that. These are the super songs that absolutely make careers. They often outlive the artist. The fans absolutely require them at concerts. You can't not play these songs because that's the reason the fans are there in the first place. They persist in popularity, becoming instantly recognizable by music fans for multiple generations. So super songs are those career level songs that last for 20, 30, 40, 100 years. All right, so stickiness. Why is stickiness important here? So stickiness, song stickiness has a handful of attributes. Let's take a second and talk about this. So stickiness is how well a song sticks to the listener. It clarifies the overall messaging for the song between the artist and the listener. It strengthens fan engagement. It expands the visual for the song, where the fans can actually see the movie in their mind, the 3-minute movie. It speeds production. It excites radio. It allows the artist and their team to work smarter, not harder, to actually save money and to ultimately make more money. The net is that songs are the oil in the engine. They're the superfood of the music world. Okay? Can't emphasize it enough. So let's, to get the most from this training, you really need to approach it with a proper mindset. So here's how we need to think about this training. So much like the dart guy throwing darts or an archery shooting a bow and arrow, he doesn't just pick up a dart and throw it at the dartboard. He knows exactly what to hit. Okay? Artists, writers, publishers plant their songs in the box with the most revenue and purposefully avoid those that do not. So let's jump into the matrix here. This is the lens that we're going to be talking about the 4 archetypes through. So you'll see on the left is time and on the bottom is place. Time and place. Here we have time, we have up-tempo songs, and we have down-tempo ballads on the bottom, right? And on place, we have hyper-personal on the left, and we have universal on the right, okay? It's important to understand that each song lives somewhere. Either the artist's songs lives in the artist's ego alone, or the song lives in the heart of the listener. And that's an important takeaway because we're going to be talking about songs that live in the heart, mind, and spirit of the listener. And I know that sounds kind of squishy and like The Secret. It's not The Secret. It's actually a tangible thing that certain song archetype yields that result. All right, so let's take a run of the bases here. So down here at the bottom, this is archetype 1. This is a down-tempo song that is written from a hyper-personal place. These are the songs that each of us, the first 40 songs we wrote as beginning artists. They were hyper-personal, they were about breakups, they were slow and meandering, and they made sense to us, but they rarely made sense to anybody else. And that's okay. That's just a fact of creative DNA. You need to write those 40 or 50 songs to get them out of your system, right? But as an artist and writer graduates, you move into this archetype number 2 up here, where now they're up-tempo songs. They're still hyper-personal. They probably are only clear to you. What's that, Sam? Okay, good. I think so, yeah. Good job. So in archetype 2 up here, these are up-tempo songs that have more energy, but are still written from a very personal place and are probably only clear to the artist themselves. But as we move to the right side of this matrix, now we have down-tempo ballad songs that have a universal approach. Everybody can understand it. Everybody gets it. There's clarity. You don't need to define things or explain things. It's gettable out of the gate. Moving on into archetype number 4, we have, this is kind of the super song archetype up here. These are up-tempo songs that are universal and they're clear to everybody. They are immediately understandable out of the gate. This archetype here is where 80% of the song revenue is derived for publishers and record labels. It's not an accident. This right side of the matrix is where most of the revenue comes from. So on the left, the net is that songs on the left, artists write most of the time. And artists, it's funny because artists are kind of wrong out of the gate here. They write this, they want to go here instinctively, but they're wrong. This generates less than 15% of publishing revs. They're pitched and cut less than 10% of the time. So you want to avoid these archetypes that are 80% unpitchable and that are kind of DOA. Instead, so these songs tell the artist's story only, not the fan's story. Okay. However, on the flip side of that, songs on the right, these are super songs, right? And we go much deeper in the full training on this, but for now, just to understand and have the lens to think through and to hit your targets, All listeners can find themselves within the song. They can personally identify with it and see themselves in it. It's kind of like a great film. Fans, audiences see themselves in the film, much like a great song. So if you remember the stickiness attributes we talked about, they clarify the overall messaging, strengthens fan engagement, expands the visual, speeds production, excites radio, all those things we talked about earlier, working smarter, not harder, saves money and makes money. These are all natural kind of byproducts of songs that are on the right side of the matrix. Okay. So let's look real quick at one artist, how they kind of navigated these 4 archetypes throughout their career. So let's look at Journey. Everybody knows Journey, probably one of the biggest, most popular bands in the world. Let's use them as an example. There they are in their 80s heyday. Look at those goobers. All right, so song stickiness matrix. Let's look at an example in Q1 at the bottom here. So, and these songs, let me say too, these songs are really tricky to find because they usually producer kills them. They don't want to record them because the producer knows that like these are drudgery songs that are wrist slitting. But occasionally one gets through. And for Journey, an example of that was In My Lonely Feeling. And you can look this up on YouTube and check it out. Super slow, super laborious. Don't know what the heck they're talking about. You want to check your watch. You want to check Facebook and go pick up your dry cleaning while this song's going on. So that's an example of archetype number 1, down-tempo, personal. And we'll look at the numbers for these after. Next song up would be a song, Homemade Love. This was on Journey's Departure album. And it was up-tempo, had energy, but still you really kind of didn't connect with it on a deeper level because you didn't know what the hell it was talking about. Moving on to archetype number 3 is a song called Open Arms. Everybody understands it. Everybody gets it. It's a ballad, universal theme. Did much, much better than the other songs on the left. And then moving on quickly to the super song, Don't Stop Believing. Probably one of the top downloaded streamed songs in the world. Everybody understands it. Everybody sees themselves in it. They turn it up when they hear it on the radio. It's a classic song. It's a career-making song for Journey, no doubt. So those are a couple examples of Journey, how they kind of navigated the 4 song archetypes here. And let's look at numbers here. If we look at streaming numbers, 50,000. These are YouTube numbers. 50,000 plays for In My Lonely Feeling, 300,000 plays for Homemade Love, 35 million plays for Open Arms, and another 435 million for Don't Stop Believing. So the data here supports what we're talking about here in the 4 song archetypes, the super songs. These are the good, the bad, and the insanely great. So what you want to do is you want to think about your writing and your songs as living in one of these 4 quadrants. You don't want to only write up-tempo universal songs, but you want to purposefully point your writing time in that direction. You don't want to just be a pinball writing whatever you want, whenever you want to write it. You want to have a purpose. You want to have an intent. You want to use the data and the training within hacking music to really inform where you're investing your writing time. So this is an important piece of data. And then another thing you want to think about is a path here. It's very common for baby writers, those developing writers at the bottom of the pyramid, to start down here in Q1, archetype number 1, In My Lonely Feeling box. And then you figure some things out and you go up to quadrant 2 where Homemade Love is. And then you figure out a little bit more and you go into Q3. And then if you're lucky enough and smart enough and you have a team around you that can help get you there, eventually you may write a super song, which is Q4. So this is a very common pattern. You never start at the top, right? The super song. You always start writing those crappy songs in Q1, and you do this end pattern. This end pattern is very common, and we see it in some of the other training modules in hacking music. So I want you to become familiar with this and see this as a kind of a path forward, a treasure map. 30,000, these are 435 million. So the takeaway is this: each song lives somewhere. Either the song lives in the artist's head and ego, and they think they're the shit, or the song lives in the heart and the spirit of the listener. So as you're writing songs, you want to be very purposeful and intentional where your songs live, where you're investing your writing time, to stack the deck in your odds, in your favor, to where one day you will move out of that Q1 into Q2 and go into Q3 and Q4 ultimately. So I hope that helps you. I hope that's clear for you. If you have any questions, you can leave them below. And this has been the 4 song archetypes, the super song, slice from the super song training module, the good, the bad, and the insanely great. All right, so we'll see you next time.